Look at this.
And here we go.
Great workout.
Nothing like the blood pumping to make you feel younger than I really are. Let's put these things on. Okay.
Welcome to the next exciting episode of Wolfe versus Wrath.
Oh, yes.
This is Wolfe.
And this is Wrath.
And we're best of friends.
Absolutely.
But we don't agree on everything.
A lot of things.
And one of the things that we don't agree with is the Second Amendment.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a big opening.
Well, you know, there's a lot of discussion about the Second Amendment right now.
Indeed. And there should be.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed. And it's based around mass shootings.
It's based around fear.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fear of mass shootings. Because right now, America leads the world.
You realize they've had gun control long before mass shootings were a thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But so of the 23 rich nations, rich countries, we lead the world. We're 22 times more mass murders than most nations that are considered developed.
That is a fact.
Exactly.
That is a fact. Okay. What does that say about us?
It says that in other countries, they have crazy people and they don't give them guns.
I disagree. What it says is, as a nation, we are very immature.
No, there's immaturity everywhere. Every culture, every nation has immature people in it.
I would argue the fact that the reason that we have such a problem right now is because there was a time where people did not react the way that they did, and they still had the same rights. And I'm not talking about other rights, other civil liberties. I'm talking about specifically the Second Amendment. And it wasn't as nearly as big as an issue because there was a time, I don't know if you know this or not, because you might. So there was a time you could order a fully automatic machine gun and have it delivered to your front freaking door. Yes, that happened.
And see,
and we were mature adults, and I want a thing. So why? I don't need to explain to you why I want a thing. I just want a thing. Why? Because it's free. Free nation. With freedom comes difficulty, pain, responsibility, growth.
And
I don't want to give that up, though.
Violent acts have a way of escalating.
Absolutely.
So the first mass shooter.
Unlike here.
So there's a principle, basically.
There is.
That the first person to commit a heinous act has to be crazy as hell. The next person who does it only has to be a little crazier. I mean, a little less crazy. Progressively, as it becomes normal and more people do it, the less crazy you have to be to do it. The first mass shooter in modern history that happened right here in Austin was batshit crazy.
Excuse the term. Black and white in the tower.
Exactly.
In UT. Okay.
But after a while, it happened so much that you only have to be a little bit crazy to do it. So it becomes normalized in the culture.
What you're talking about is the frog in the boiling water. You know, you throw him in the boiling water, he jumps right out. If you slowly bring the water up to a boil, slowly he won't jump out. And then eventually it becomes normal. And then eventually it's too late, he dies.
So as a cult, that's kind of a cultural, as the entire society. Right. What I'm talking about is that there are actually trends that happen where things become trendy almost. And right now, mass shootings are trendy.
Yes. So let's get back.
Every crazy person, their go-to is, let me shoot up a school. Let me shoot up a mall.
Because I have an agenda, whatever the agenda is. It's maladjusted agenda. So can we talk about what the Second Amendment, though? Because
go ahead.
So why don't you look it up?
I will look it up.
Please, if you would. Because you're pretty good at that. You're better at that than I am. It happens.
Yeah.
See?
I'm going to look it up.
Guess what I admitted, America? I admitted somebody else did something better than me, and it didn't demonize me or make me stupid or less than or anything like that. I defer to somebody else that knows how to do something better than me.
So,
just saying.
So, the Second Amendment.
Yes.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I know where you're going with this.
Shall not be infringed is not a gray area. There is no gray area and shall not be infringed. It's not about hunting.
And I completely agree with you there.
Forgive me.
Completely agree with you.
America, look at me right here. It's not about hunting. Let it go.
I completely agree with you. We have no disagreement that the Second Amendment allows total freedom in buying arms.
It doesn't allow it. It maintains that no one should take it away.
It basically protects your right, so that it keeps the government, the state, the federal government from infringing upon your right to bear arms. No disagreement there.
As well as
no disagreement there.
Right.
Where my contention is that was a mistake.
How?
That was a mistake.
Freedom?
No. So it is what always boggles my mind is that there are so many things that we are not allowed to do. Do you realize in the great state of Texas, we have just been allowed to buy switchblades within the last 5 years?
Okay.
And no one is screaming about the 20 states in America where you cannot own a switchblade. No one is screaming about it. No one's going. Yeah, it's still that many. There are 11 states. There are 11 states where the what they call a ballistic knife are not legal, which is odd to me. Like you can buy a ballistic knife in the same state that you can't buy a switchblade.
So
is weird.
Can we admit that there are some wacky laws regardless?
Absolutely.
Texas just got rid of all knife laws.
Yeah,
they didn't overturn them.
And,
they just got rid of
brass knuckles. And the reason why we put all those laws in place was for what? Because people were getting stabbed in the 70s.
Really?
All over the place. People were getting stabbed.
And it stopped
it? And it stopped it? What happened was this. We outlawed knives. And they picked up guns.
Really?
They did. We outlawed switchblades, and suddenly everyone's getting shot in the 80s.
So, so I'm going to harken back. So with the DA haircut and the hair grease and the leather jacket and the boots and the motorcycles and honestly, they had black and white, all the gangs. What did they all have in the movies?
Knives, switchblades. Exactly.
It was cliche, yes?
Exactly.
Right. Why?
Because it was normal in the culture. It wasn't switchblades.
Normal.
Switchblades were cool. They were cool. It was still trendy. Are cool. I know. I want a switchblade. But my point is, we have a history in our culture we have a history in America of banning things that we consider to be dangerous. And no one screams about how their rights are being infringed because you can't buy a knife.
Yes,
no one.
They do.
I'll go you one better. So, when was the last time someone screamed about their rights being infringed because they can't buy a tank?
Nobody's trying to.
No one does that. No one screams about their rights being infringed. So the whole argument. The whole argument.
I know you can own a tank.
So the whole argument about people saying, "Oh, my freedoms are being infringed because I can't do this or that." Or we don't allow you to do a whole thing because we don't allow you to grow poppy seeds in your backyard so you can make heroin. No one's screaming, going, "My rights are being infringed because I can't make heroin in my backyard."
So can we agree that
no one's crying because I can't? My rights are being infringed because I can't make meth in my bathtub.
Right.
No one's screaming about that.
That's not analogous. So what
it is? Because if the point is that your rights are being infringed, if you were to get rid of your right to own a AK-47 or M16 or whatever, the whole argument that your rights are being infringed because you can't own those things. I mean, if those laws were in place, our rights are infringed all the time. Freedom is not absolute in this country and never has been.
Certain things are. The first one. Let's go back a little bit. Before there was a Second Amendment, what's before the Second Amendment? The First Amendment, yes. The Bill of Rights. The first 10
And
amendments.
who did it not apply to?
Oh, that's a whole nother group.
Who did it not apply to? So do you realize we had a war? I'm going to keep going on this.
Yes.
We had a war because people thought their rights were being infringed because they no longer had the right to own slaves.
Right.
And what did we do? We got rid of that right.
Right.
And to this day, are there people screaming, a large majority of people, not the KKK, but a large majority screaming because, damn it, they took away my right to own slaves.
Right.
No.
So that was never in the bloody Constitution, by the way. First Amendment was freedom of speech. It had no. So did people?
I understand. I understand that.
Did people twist it and turn it and manipulate it in order for their gain to get up on other people and oppress others? Yes. Oh, well, that's never been done ever before in American history, ever, about anything. But the point being, though, is once you got rid of that idiocy, we can agree that's idiocy, among other level words, effed up, and many different levels. I didn't use it. It's effed. Effed. It's on YouTube. They use effin, EFFIN now in place of it. So when we learned and grew up, the First Amendment is just as pure as it was the day it was written. And we just now abide by it and apply it to actually everybody.
And we apply it differently.
Which is what it was designed to do in the first place.
The First Amendment is so broad that it's always, I mean, there was a time where if you said certain things that branded you as a communist, you could be locked up in this country. So, I mean,
the Red Scare. Okay,
yeah. So the First Amendment has always been slippery.
But they're growing
just like the Second Amendment.
Yeah. And
it's always been slippery.
Do you know we have gun control?
I know we do. I know we do.
Has it worked?
No, it hasn't worked.
Thank you.
Because it's so. Let's talk about like the state that everyone always brings up when it comes to gun control, Maryland, or we can even
California.
Yeah, and they're like, well, there's so many guns still. Yeah, because you can go to the next state and buy them. You know, so yeah, of course there are. So you're in a major metropolitan city where there's a lot of crime.
They're illegal then.
But that's not the point. They're available. They're omnipresent. They're so available. So it doesn't matter.
Who are the ones that are not following the laws, though?
A lot of folks. And so
that are called criminals.
Yes.
Right. Which you cannot regulate people who are intent on breaking the law.
But it's happened in other countries. So that's the problem is that with that argument is that in other countries, it has worked. In other countries, it has worked. Japan has had their number of gun deaths.
Australia, New Zealand.
Let's talk about Japan because they have the strictest gun control laws in the world.
Right.
So let's talk about Japan.
Right.
Their gun deaths are in the double digits, not in the thousands.
So we talk
double digits.
So we talking about how screwed up a country is, or are we talking about the Second Amendment and the rights?
We are talking about the Second Amendment. We're talking about
people in a nation that's designed around freedom.
I'm not arguing that the rights exist. I'm arguing about whether they should exist.
You say they shouldn't exist at all.
I say they should not exist.
So do you understand, and I don't mean to be condescending, I truly don't. Do you understand how this country was actually built?
I do. And we're not the first country to be founded on revolution.
Not at all.
Same thing happened in France.
Same thing happened
we mirrored our revolution on France's revolution.
We did a lot.
And you can't walk around with an M16 in France.
No, because their constitution did not defend the right, and the whole point to have it not ever happen again. So when was the last time it happened? Here's where I hear a lot of weird stuff. So you have people that say, well, your AR-15, AK-47, because those are the big scary guns. I don't want to get into the technicals, but look it up. So you think that you and your buddies with AR-15s are going to defend against a country that has a government military that has tanks and
drones and everything else,
F-15s and all this stuff, and I'm
trained soldiers,
right?
Not just out of shape Bubba with his shotgun.
I'm with you. So work with me here, though. So I'm heading somewhere. And I was saying, okay, well, it's been done before. Okay.
Different technology.
Other countries, no.
Different technology.
People stood in front of tanks, got ridden over.
Yeah. So you're talking about China.
Well, that's an example. But point being is,
But name a Western country now name a Western country that does not have the right to bear arms that has like become this oppressive regime.
I'm not going to do that because I can't.
Because it doesn't exist. Okay, France had a violent revolution.
That's a manipulative tactic. You're better than that, right?
No, that's not manipulative.
I can't pick one out of my back pocket. I'm not going to.
So I don't have to. I'm going to tell you that it hasn't happened in the modern age. Hasn't happened.
So their point is, how could So you having your AR-15s and AK-47s, you're going to go up against a government that has all these major weapons, big time. And my question is, so because you think you wouldn't prevail, you're going to just give up?
The government would not need to violently oppress its citizens because we will give up all they have to do is manipulate it. I mean, I don't want to get into a whole political discussion.
No, but you're
right. If you look at what
Yes.
the current state
Yes.
of our politics,
People are
it's
willing
evident
Yes.
that they don't need a violent revolution
No.
because people will turn it. They can manipulate people to turn against each other, and they can turn patriotism into a religion
Yep.
and nationalism into a religion.
Right.
So people will do whatever the government says at this
Right.
point
Or
because it's become
what's popular.
Exactly.
And they will eventually, that's what's going on right now, is they're trying to train and brainwash, whatever you want to call it, us into voluntarily giving up our rights.
Yeah. Even and to damn near creating an emperor at this point.
Yeah, and old man Joe, after saying, bingo, I'm going to take, if you're an assault weapon, I'm going to ban them. And later on in the same interview with Anderson Cooper, I'm sorry, Mr. Vanderbilt. Oh, I'm Anderson Cooper, that's right. So because he knows what the common people and normal people want. Yeah, Mr. Vanderbilt. You know he's from.
Oh yes, I do.
Just saying.
I do.
So he later
irrelevant to the conversation.
No, it's not, because he's on CNN, the liberal media, and yet
CNN is not the liberal media. It's the last one that's actually non-biased. It's not liberal.
They're biased.
It's not liberal. Fox, which is a bunch of crap.
It's a bunch of crap.
And they have convinced everyone that CNN is this biased liberal
and they're
platform,
not.
and it's not.
So my point being, though, is he actually admitted, just flat out, but we can't take your guns. It's illegal. Just flat out admitted it.
We can't. And see, this brings us to the next point.
And I know that.
This brings us to the next point.
So why make the effort? So why try to? So why all this smoke and mirrors? Because it's rhetoric to your constituency.
No. I don't think so. Here's my point. As much as I agree and believe that the Second Amendment was a mistake, I also believe that the horse is out of the barn. The pig's in the python.
Right.
It is done.
Right.
No one's going to take your gun. That's
correct. No, but reasonable people don't think that. But
my issue is that since the 70s, when the NRA did this flip-flop and suddenly became the promoter of guns for everyone, doesn't matter if you're crazy, doesn't matter if you're a known terrorist on a terrorist watch list, that you can have guns because they're in the pocket of gun manufacturers. Now, even common sense stuff like, hey, if you're on a terrorist watch list, you shouldn't have a gun.
Right.
Now, the NRA is even against that kind of stuff.
Right.
Hey, if you've got a history of mental illness, you shouldn't have a gun.
Do you know?
They're even against that.
Do you know the
common sense gun laws?
It's not all that uncommon sense. So it's kind of crazy and extreme. Do you know why they're doing it?
Because they get money from gun manufacturers. That's why.
That's true.
Because our lobbying system did a big flip-flop in the 80s, and now the lobbyists control the government.
The NRA is not to be trusted. Okay, Gun Owners America. But bear with me, though. Mm-hmm. So what is happening is, because the horses are out of the barn now. Mm-hmm. So if you allow, and we all have, the NFA and other gun control, what they're trying to do, the essence, without manipulation, and I question their motive as well, but what they're really trying to do is saying, okay, we need to stop it here. This is far enough.
They're using
no more, because it has been manipulated in the past.
It has not.
Twisted motives. Yeah, it has.
So their motives are the ones that are twisted. They are working on the fear that there has never been a time in American history where anyone has taken guns away from Americans.
That's not true. That is absolutely not true.
Listen, I will show you. Let me go.
You're not going to like it either.
They have made that the big boogeyman so that they can scare someone and tell you that, hey, if you don't allow terrorists to have guns, then they're going to come for your guns too. If you don't allow crazy people to have guns, they're going to come for your guns too. So everyone is terrified of even not everyone, because this is the thing. This is what's the thing. If you poll members of the NRA, most of them are in favor of common sense gun regulation, but the leaders, no, it's true. Look it up. Look it up. It's true. It's true. But the leadership of the NRA doesn't want it. Why? Because it will influence their bottom line, their pocket.
Correct.
So the average American does not want guns in the hands of terrorists. The average American, if you're on a terrorist watch list, they don't want you to have a gun, but the NRA will fight it every single time.
So do you know that the essence, and you're not going to like this at all, nor should you, the essence of all gun control started with racism?
Oh, so listen. So let's go there.
It's a simple fact.
Let's go there. So
Black Panthers, the whole deal.
Absolutely.
All
absolutely.
history.
Absolutely. So the NRA was in favor of gun control when it was, and so there's a joke that going around that if you want gun control, just put guns in the hands of every black person in America, and then suddenly,
and I say,
everyone would be,
hell yeah!
Everyone would be for gun control.
I think,
and that's another, and that brings up, that brings up another issue. So everyone's like, okay, if you had guns in the hands of your average American and open carry, so on and so forth, then crime would go down. But the problem is your average American cannot carry a gun without being shot by police. And there has been videos that have been made of a white average-looking guy walking down the street with an M16 on his shoulder, AR-15, whatever. It's important to you, not important to me.
It's
what
important,
the differential.
period.
But anyway, the differentiation. AR-15, I will use that because that will make you happy. But AR-15.
I'm sorry.
But
you dropped
your average. But so there are videos where someone has walked down the street with an AR-15, and they were calmly approached by police.
They were
saying, "Hey, why are you? I have the right to carry it." They quoted the statute, so on and so forth, and the cops walked away.
Correct.
Then they show a black person walking down the street with an AR-15 and guns pointed at his head, dropped to the floor. Dude, don't move. This and that. And when he exerted the same rights. Still, he's face down.
That's another episode.
But no, because it's relevant to this discussion. Is that when you say that everyone should have the right, everyone is not treated equally according to the law. And so for some people, the law, the
law is pure.
The law as written is pure.
That's
the law as exercised is not.
Oh, twisted.
It's not.
No, not
and
at all.
So we've already got an epidemic of. I mean, I don't know if it's an epidemic, but at least it's an epidemic of the reporting of unarmed black men being killed by police.
Right.
Put an AR-15 in their hand, and that will increase exponentially. They'll all get shot.
I know. I know. And that is another episode because you're talking about racism alive and well, regardless of what it is. And it's nauseating. So that's going to be an episode that neither one of us are going to disagree. I fear.
Yeah, that's one that we won't. That's one we won't.
It's going to be a short. It's bad. It's wrong. It's stupid. You're an a-hole if you.
So I mean,
but if you have a dam and there's a leak, if you don't plug the leak, eventually it's going to go.
Okay. So what is the plug? What's the plug in the leak? Is it not allowing any gun regulations whatsoever?
They are in favor of getting rid of the Hearing Protection Act, HPA. Okay, which didn't happen, which probably won't happen, is to remove suppressor silencers. Actually, they're called silencers. Hiram Maxim, who invented them, called them silencers. Yeah. Deal with it, America. So removing silencers from the NFA ban list. Because,
that'll help.
Guess what? If you fire...
There you go. We've just solved all mass shootings by disallowing silencers.
Well, guess what? In Europe, where you have many countries, you can fire weapons in your own property or at a gun range. It's impolite to not have a silencer. It's called noise
But
pollution.
what does that have to do with mass shooting?
I'm talking to you about making a point, so bear with me. I'm
Make
getting there.
your damn point.
I am getting there. I'm old. Deal with it. So, gun control exists. Not all gun control makes bloody sense. It was done based on reactions of knee-jerk people that want to feel safe.
No,
Guess what?
it was done.
Yeah, it was.
It was done based
Yeah, it
on
was.
politicians who wanted to appear as if they were doing something by
couldn't
doing
agree more.
next to nothing.
Right, by giving you a false sense of security.
Exactly, by doing next to nothing.
By doing next to nothing, banning stuff and
Banning one gun and not another. It's just random bull.
Prohibition.
Yeah. So
Yeah. How'd that work out? Yeah, Rick.
So let's talk about that.
You're to blame for this, Rick.
So let's talk about that.
It's a great idea.
We can blame our producer.
Yes,
for this
blame
one.
our producer, Rick. He's amazing.
So, but let's talk about this because Rick brought up a good point.
Made it illegal. What happened?
And so it created a
market.
It created a black market.
Yeah, to this day that holds up.
An explosion in crime.
Yeah,
because a bottle of alcohol is considerably cheaper than an AR-15.
Oh, not these days.
So, but listen,
you can get an AR-15 for about $400.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're buying a $400 bottle of alcohol, then you're probably, you could afford a $5,000 AR-15. So, but my point is that, like, let's take Japan, for instance, again, because they have the hardest gun control legislation in, arguably in the world.
Yeah, sure.
So, do you know what an AR-15 would cost on the black market? And do you think that
that would be against the law, right?
Yeah. So,
yes.
But do you know what it would cost on the black market? Like, you're talking 20, 30, 40,000. So do you think the average little incel who's living in his mom's basement who gets pissed off because he can't get laid is going to spend 20, 30, or even have $20,000, $30,000 to buy an AR-15 and go on a shooting spree?
So what you're talking about is that
rich
illegal, politicians can and rich CEOs and rich people can afford them. So we should ban them and make it to where the average common, which is the middle class, which is in this country, it's fading gray.
So the average criminal couldn't buy one because it would be too expensive for the average criminal to buy one. It would be too damn expensive. The only your top criminals would have them, and so you would wind up with, instead of what is it?
Cost of doing business. They'll get a fully automatic M16 on the black market, pay whatever it is.
Yeah, they'll get a bank loan and go out and buy an.
No,
they won't. They won't have the money. You won't have a 12-year-old drug dealer who makes $800 a week slinging crack go out and spend $20,000 on an AR-15. It wouldn't happen because he wouldn't have the money.
They'll rob somebody
So
else.
you wouldn't have the 12. You wouldn't have 12. 10, 11, 9, and 8-year-olds shooting people because they would not be able to afford the weapon to do it.
So that's your solution.
That is my solution.
Wow.
That is my solution. Absolutely.
Well, that's a solution. That's for sure.
And I will go back to this, but I don't think it would ever happen. I think that our right to bear arms is an absolute. It's not going anywhere. And I think that the NRA is just using that, they're coming for your guns as a scare tactic to avoid any type of legislation.
Nobody's disputing that, Raph.
Any type of legislation.
Nobody is disputing that.
So then let's go back to the very last one that they shot down, which is, maybe the last one that I gave a damn about that they shot down, which was people who are on the terrorist watch list owning weapons, or background checks, so that if you are have a history of mental illnesses, that you should not own a weapon. Is that something that you would agree with? Either of those or both of those?
That's ridiculous.
I mean, would you agree with that? Those should have passed.
Removing those restrictions?
No, I'm saying that you should
passing the limitations.
Passing the limitations.
No, of course not. It's ridiculous.
You don't think that if you're on a terrorist watch list, you shouldn't be allowed to own a gun?
Did they put those two together?
No, they were separate legislations, and both of them were shot down by pressure from the NRA.
You're telling me it's completely separate legislation?
Yes.
Okay, so
I mean, if you're on both, let's go there. If you're on both lists,
so
you have a history of mental illness and you're on the terrorist watch list.
Mental illness. I'm depressed. I got mental illness.
Well, I mean,
so I got to give up my right to protect myself, my family? Are you serious?
You know,
there's a hell of a gray area here. There's a 1 to 10.
Okay.
Not everybody's a 10, Wrath.
Okay. But do you realize that for most of my life, I have not owned a gun, and I have lived in some bad areas, high crime areas.
Sure.
And I have not owned a gun.
Sure.
For most of my life, I have not felt the need to use a gun to protect myself.
It's your protected right not to.
I've kicked a lot of butt.
It's his protected right not to.
I'll tell you that.
That's the part he's not understanding.
You know,
Merc out there.
No, I do understand. It's your right. I'm not saying
not to do it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's a right. What I'm saying is that I don't think it's a necessity to own a gun to protect yourself, mentally ill or whatever. I don't think it's necessary. If you want a gun, fine, that's great. But if you're saying that if we took guns away from mentally ill people, that suddenly they're not going to be able to, and that's what the NRA has done to you, is they make everyone think that if we take guns away from people who clearly should not own one, so when we talk about it's a mental health issue, when we talk about it's not a gun issue, it's a mental health issue, then shouldn't we say, well, then don't give mentally ill people AR-15s? Let's not do that. Shouldn't that be the natural step? If it's a mental health issue, if you believe that, then why are we giving mentally ill people guns?
So let me ask you a question. So do you trust our government?
I don't trust you. No, I'm kidding. No, I love you to death. No, I'm kidding. I don't trust anybody. Yeah, I don't trust anybody. So no, I don't trust our government 100%.
So if we don't have the power to protect ourselves, regardless of whatever, okay? So the options are the police and the military. Okay,
which are made up of American citizens also,
who are racist on ad nauseum because there are
a lot of issues.
So and it takes them minutes to get there when seconds matter. You definitely don't want to trust the federal government in a lot of ways, other than to protect our borders from overt aggression to our country. Okay, that's what they're designed to do. Okay, so if you don't trust these entities, if you remove the way for us to protect ourselves and against an oppressive government, if in fact that they decide for whatever crazy reason to just change their mind, which happened throughout history.
Okay, so let's go.
The first thing that the Nazis and many other cultures have done first was disarm the public. Give me your guns. We'll take care of you. You don't need them.
So let's go back to
and it's always went bad.
So since you brought up the idea of protecting yourself against a corrupt government.
Yes.
And you also brought up
the Second Amendment's about.
You also brought up that the origins of gun control began in California with the Black Panthers.
Well,
the Black Panther. One of them.
It was actually much earlier than that.
Let's talk about
It was pre-Civil War. Actually.
Yeah, let's talk about the Black Panthers for a second.
Yeah.
They began in Oakland.
Yeah.
Because there was, just as there is now, an epidemic of police abusing their authority and brutalizing black people and murdering black people.
Obviously.
And so the Black Panther Party for self-defense was created. Right. And they armed themselves to police the police. Legally.
Absolutely.
And they were murdered en masse by police and by FBI. It did not work out very well for them. So that was an instance where a group of people who were been oppressed by the government rose up and defended themselves. They rose up and defended themselves with firearms, and they were brutalized and murdered.
Yes.
You read the COINTELPRO papers, they were murdered by police and by FBI.
Tragic.
Didn't work out well for them.
But at least they had the right to do it. It's better than the alternative.
The alternative is what we have right now with thousands of people, more people being shot by guns in America than in wars overseas. That's the alternative.
Do you have any idea and God, I hate to admit this, how long it's going to take us to get our minds right about racism, about gender bias, about all these things that should never be an issue, that have been an issue in the past? It's going to take decades.
I agree.
And it's going to be nauseatingly slow. In the meantime, I want at least the possibility of every citizen in the United States to be able to have the ability to defend
to go
themselves.
out and murder
No.
50 people from a Las
No.
Vegas hotel room.
That is somebody that
Everyone
has
should
taken
have
their
that
rights
ability.
and twisted it.
Everyone should have the right to do that.
They took a right and made it a crime.
They took a right and used it to commit a crime.
Right.
And that goes back to what I
And
asked, the question I asked you
that hasn't
before.
happened with prohibition at all.
That goes back to the
It
question
was
I
a
asked
great
you
idea.
before.
It didn't work out too well.
Okay. Well, what I'm telling you is that the Second Amendment was a great idea that hasn't worked out so well.
Still
That's
is
why
a
we've
great
got
idea.
so many people who have been murdered. Do you realize that one of the arguments that constantly gets brought up
Other
is
countries
about
have-
knives,
Let's talk about other countries and guns.
countries. Yeah. So
Okay.
so let's talk about other countries and knives.
guns.
Do you? Let's talk. No. Let me finish this point. Okay. So in the UK, there have been like 285 some odd deaths from knives or sharp implements. Right. Okay. Do you realize that accidental shootings in America, accidental, we're not talking mass shootings, accidental, double the number of knife homicides in the UK? Okay. So what I'm talking about is the whole like, oh, well, other countries, they don't have guns, but they'll stab you. Yeah. But like, that old
run
joke,
you over with a truck,
or run you over with a
else.
truck, or so on and so forth.
Blow you
and
up,
it's not. But the point is, you can't stab somebody from the safety of a hotel room in Las Vegas and kill 50 people.
So
do you ever hear that?
So the idea of removing the right, the inalienable right to
of crazy people to own guns.
Please don't mock me. I'm making an point here because
I am not going to stop mocking you ever for the rest of your life.
You are my fellow American citizen. Damn it! So to restrict the ability to defend yourself against other people, foreign and domestic. And just trust other people to be able to take care of this situation for you.
We have to trust them to own guns and not kill us. So why shouldn't we trust? I mean, come on. It's trust either way.
That's right.
It's trust either way.
You know who I trust?
I don't trust my damn neighbors.
I don't either. A good guy with a gun is going to stop a bad guy with a gun.
Who the hell is the good guy with the gun?
Statistically, a good guy with a gun is not going to stop a bad guy with a gun.
No.
Because
and who determines who the good guy is? The other question.
Law-abiding.
But who determines that? A cop show up on the site. There's one guy with a gun, another guy with a gun. Who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy?
The guy who legally got it.
How do you know that when you first pull up?
You're talking about situational awareness. I'm talking about
no. I'm talking about the whole argument of the good guy with a gun versus the bad guy. Who knows who the good guy is? You have a bunch of people walk into a restaurant with guns. You should be scared to death. It shouldn't be like, oh well, one of these might be a good guy. It's like
drawing. That's why.
Listen.
That's why a lot of Americans will not draw their weapon concealed if they have it on them if something goes down, because you're right. They want to protect them and theirs.
Yeah. So
that's what they want to do.
But it's not just about who will draw their weapon. My point is, let me give you an analogy. Let me give you a separate analogy.
Okay.
That like this is from Muhammad Ali.
Oh,
so you've got 1,000 snakes coming at you.
Okay.
Some of those snakes are good snakes, and you got 1,000 of them coming at you.
A good snake.
And so you're going to trust that let's say 100 of those snakes are good ones, that they're going to get in front of the rest of them, form a shield, and protect you, or are you going to get the hell out of there? All right.
If you can.
So my point is that yes, if you get a bunch of people walking into the room, you got to assume with guns, you got to assume that yes, some of them are good, but you also got to assume some of them are bad.
Right.
How do you differentiate? How do you know this good guy with a gun is a good guy? How do you know? You don't know.
In the heat of the moment?
In the heat of the moment.
Oh yeah, you don't.
You don't know. And so the point is, if 100 people walk in with guns, any rational person would assume that all of them are dangerous and a threat, and it should scare anybody. And you know what? And the stress level. So again, I told you I grew up in some high crime areas,
right.
And the stress level and post-traumatic stress disorder that happens in there is very similar to war.
Correct.
And so if you're seeing,
actually, sometimes
worse actually,
because it lasts longer.
Exactly.
The average battle lasts so long, whereas
and so if you imagine a child growing up with that fear
Of course.
all the time because he sees
Nobody's
guns
badly-
all around them,
No,
and he
nobody's
sees constantly mass shootings happening, and he looks around and he can't even go to a restaurant without seeing guns everywhere after he sees on the news week after week after week after week mass shootings.
Okay.
And he is going to grow up.
It's sad.
It is going to increase the mental health issue in America, not decrease it.
Do you know that there are people? Okay, I have heard you specifically say on more than one occasion,
Correct.
right now, in
Correct.
2019, relatively speaking to the number of people that we have, we are safer now than ever before
I
in
agree.
American history.
So why the hell do we need guns? We are safer because people are doing better. Our average
Right.
person
Right.
owns a car, a cell phone, and
Because
a microwave, and
if you-
cable TV.
So if you go, but let me finish. So you go back 19th century, mid 1873.
go back to the 70s and 60s. I mean, it was
No,
more
I'm-
violent then.
I'm talking about 1873.
Okay, go ahead.
With single action army, the cowboy guns, right?
Uh-huh.
So it was much more violent then. Your statistic to be shot was much higher then because
Because there were a lot of poor folks. That's why.
Right.
No, that's why.
regardless of the reason.
And so we
the
fixed
point
that
being,
because the solution was to fix.
same rights, same Second Amendment, same humans. We haven't evolved, although you like to think we are, America.
We've evolved our guns.
We've
though.
evolved nothing.
We've evolved our
we
guns.
are more immature now than ever before, which is why I thank you that I have my Second Amendment so that I can protect me and mine just in case some whack job decides to turn a real thing and use it for nefarious purposes. That's a
Okay.
sad state of affairs.
So I'm gonna ask you one more time.
Okay. Well, you almost
Someone
you almost like my barely right there.
On the terrorist watch group,
Right.
on the watch list,
Right.
someone on the terrorist watch list,
Right.
should they be allowed to own a firearm?
What got them on there?
As a rule, it's all going to be
Don't-
different. It's
don't-
all
don't
each
we-
each case is going to be
Do we
different. But
not have
as
due-
a rule,
do
as
we
a
not-
general
do we
rule,
not have due process?
as a general rule, should someone on the terrorist watch list be allowed to own a firearm?
I don't think they should be restricted. No. I think the terrorist watch list is ridiculous.
Okay.
I think the qualifications, I think the essence of it, the idea
So
of it
let's-
is pure. I think it's wonderful. But to get on that watch list, to qualify for that, suspicion is all that's needed. Well, that just negates,
it's a
one of the other 10 amendments. I remember something
Yeah,
else
yeah.
like
So-
that.
so-
Yeah. Due process. So we're just going to just take away. Do you know what? And it galls me. It galls me to even bring this up. So Donald Trump, our fearless leader, who I just can't stand.
That's a discussion for
I
another.
don't know. But he
another
just
episode.
he repealed a law, okay, that said people of mental illness no longer are restricted to owning firearms. Well, if they dig a little deeper, what it was specifically people of age that dealt with not senility. What's the word we use now? Not senility.
I don't know, Alzheimer's.
Well, not Alzheimer's, but it's a form of modern senility. When you're not sure of your surroundings all the time. All right. So it was precluding those people, from owning a firearm just because they needed help managing their finances. That was
Okay,
it. So they took those rights away, and he overturned it.
But the point is, they also have not allowed any type of laws that would make. So if you confess to your, let's say you confess to your therapist or psychiatrist,
Right.
that you
In a safe
have
space.
had, you have in a safe space, that you have had violent thoughts,
Right.
and that you've had thoughts of going out and shooting people,
Right.
Okay, they have a duty to report you.
Right. Outside of
And
HIPAA,
so
outside of HIPAA laws.
Yeah, so
Yes.
they have a duty to report you.
Yes.
So they report you to the police.
Right.
The police can't come get your gun.
Right.
So even though you have expressed that, hey, I have fantasies of going out and shooting people sometimes, and
Have you ever had one?
it's a good thing that
I'm just
mass
asking
shootings were not popular in America
Right.
back in the
Have
80s.
you ever have I ever had
So
a thought
I'm-
about walking up to somebody that I can't stand and punching them as hard as I could right in the eye,
So-
and knocking them out? Many times, my ex-wife included.
So,
I affectionately refer to as Redzilla. So, because it was a sad state of affairs, something that should have never happened. Did I ever do it? No.
So here's the thing.
I
And
should not be.
let me confess something about myself.
Okay.
So if guns were as prolific in society as they are now, back in, let's say, 81, when I was an 11-year-old angry little kid.
They are actually.
Okay. They weren't. They
Yeah,
weren't.
they were.
They weren't. They weren't. I'm telling you, not in my neighborhood, they weren't.
Oh, well, that may be true, but.
So, and if mass shootings had been as common to the point where it's, like I said, trendy now, it's like a part of our culture.
Oh, it's sad.
Back then,
Yeah.
I don't know that I wouldn't have killed somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know that I wouldn't have walked in
Yeah.
and shot up
Especially
my
you
school.
being a black man. With all the racial oppression that you had to deal with.
Well, it wasn't that. I mean, there was even just
there
being a
was
poor
that.
kid going to a school with a bunch of rich kids. I was teased mercilessly. And do you think that
So,
if guns were not prolific,
But you
and
understand
cheap,
why I brought that up, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I do.
Multi-layer.
I do.
So we're not talking about just a level of oppression. We're
Exactly.
talking about multi-level of oppression. So
Exactly.
Can
So I question myself.
Can you imagine?
I question myself
a
whether
gay
as
black woman.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that's three
Exactly.
levels of screwed.
So what I'm
It's
telling
like,
you is
know,
I question myself whether if when I was 11, 12 years old,
Right.
if I turned on the news and saw mass shootings every other week, and with the anger that I had back then,
Right.
if I had access to guns
Right.
and that situation, that
Right.
environment,
right.
I might have picked up a gun and gone to my school and killed everyone.
It's possible.
I might have.
It's always possible with anybody.
You know?
What one man can do, another can do.
Exactly. So
But taking away the Second Amendment that's already there is not.
It's
a good
not gonna
idea.
happen.
No,
It's not gonna
Nor is
happen.
it a good idea. We've tried it
I'm
with
not saying
prohibition.
that. I'm not saying
It
that
did
at this
not-
point. I'm not saying that at this moment that we should take people's guns away. I personally believe that will never happen, and
won't
that's
happen.
just a scare tactic
So why
to
do
make
they-
people, because you realize
why
that
do they
every
talk
time
about doing it, though?
do you realize
Why do they talk
they
about
don't
doing
talk
it?
about doing
Yeah,
it.
they do.
No one talks about doing it.
Yeah,
what
they
they
do.
talk
Joe
about
Biden said
what they talk about
recently.
What they talk about is, I mean, you have, again, we're talking about the fringes. What most people talk
Joe
about
Biden's
is
a fringe?
common sense gun control. That's what most people
It's
talk
still
about.
gun control.
That's what most people
which
talk
was
about.
based in racism
Common sense
and twisted
not
manipulation
giving,
of
not
something
give-
that was pure.
Not giving guns to people with mental illness is not based on racism. Not giving guns to
The
people on the
original
terrorist watch
idea
list
behind gun
is
control
not.
was
Okay, I'm not debating that. But my point is that right now I'm talking about background checks. I'm talking about. Do
We
you
already
realize?
have those.
Do you realize that
We already have
you
those.
realize that the government is not even allowed to study what the effects of gun control? They're not even allowed to study the negative effects of gun violence in America. They're not allowed to study it.
What are you talking about?
There is a law that they are not allowed to spend government money to study
Oh no!
the gun
I don't want them to do
epidemic.
that either. There's 100 reputable psychological entities out there that'll do it for them.
But most they won't. Not without
tax-
government money.
Without tax money,
You
sure
know, I
they
mean,
will.
we'll have a discussion about.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
You know,
But-
but no, the point is most studies that take place in America
I don't
happen
trust
because they get
human
government
beings.
money to do the study.
I don't trust human beings in history all the way up to now to be able to feel comfortable with trusting another governing body that has power. There are human beings to do the right thing at all times.
But yet
Hence-
you trust the guy next door who slaps up his wife every weekend when he gets drunk to walk around with an AR-15.
that's not fair.
But it's the state that we have right now. This is the current state of America.
Does that happen?
This is
Sure.
the current state of America.
There are people that do First Amendment things that I wish they wouldn't say it.
Okay, but what I'm saying, you keep bringing up trust. Do we trust the government? Do we trust the government? I'm asking you, do you trust your neighbors? Think about the people who live next door to you right now.
So here's an analogy.
So, do you trust them to walk around fully armed?
No.
I mean, right, I don't
trust
either.
Me. I trust me.
I trust me too.
I want the right.
Sometimes, like,
I trust me all the time.
Sometimes, sometimes,
1982, Conan the Barbarian. This you can trust. The Riddle of Steel.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
And
Sometimes I trust me.
I was grinning from ear to ear when I was watching that. I was like going, "Yep, no kidding. Yep."
I mean, what I'm saying is, I trust 49-year-old me. Do I trust 12-year-old me? Do I trust 17, 18, 19-year-old me?
Yeah.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. But yet 17, 18, 19-year-old me could buy a firearm.
You got to be 18 to buy a rifle or a shotgun. You got to be 21 to own a handgun.
Your dad can go and buy you a gun and hand it to you.
Okay.
In most states in America.
Well, you mean a parent?
Yeah.
That's being a parent?
Absolutely.
That's being a bloody freaking parent. Do it.
Okay.
You
So
want to stop gun violence? Be a parent.
Okay. So the number of kids that get murdered or by other kids,
yes,
is another whole epidemic.
Right.
The number of kids that accidentally shoot other kids or themselves
discharge, of course,
is huge.
Playing around with daddy's toy.
So again,
be a parent.
I trust 49-year-old me. I do not trust 17, 18, 19-year-old me with a firearm.
17-year-old should still have a parent. You did. I met them. They're awesome.
My beautiful mom.
Yes, she's great. Yeah, she is good looking too.
So
besides being brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, my point is that I don't trust everybody.
No,
and
that's the whole point.
And given the current state of gun violence in America, I think there is a reason not to trust everybody.
Of course.
Okay. So then why do we want to give guns to crazy people?
We don't want to give guns to crazy people.
But we won't stop giving guns to crazy people. You don't even want us to stop giving guns to crazy people.
So do you understand who the most important person when it comes to the First Amendment is?
Me.
The neo-Nazi KKK member that is spewing not a call to action, but is spewing every ridiculous, nasty, horrible epithet and insult humanly known possible.
With an NRA sticker on the back of his truck.
That's not...
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong.
You don't play fair.
I'm not wrong.
Sometimes, hey, a broken watch is right twice a day. Right. So that's the most important person that we have because they're exercising the extreme version of the First Amendment. I may not agree with anything that they have to say, and nor do I. But it's still because anybody can agree with a dictator. Try to disagree with one. Kim Jong-un. Yeah, you know what happens? You go away. Mm-hmm. And there's no bones about it. Because they have no rights, no freedoms, period.
And I'm not talking about getting rid of all rights.
I'm just saying.
And I'm not like, here's the thing.
Second Amendment exists.
And here's the thing. I'm not even talking about getting rid of the Second Amendment.
Right.
I think it was a bad idea, but it's here and it's here to stay.
Right.
All I'm talking about is let's do a little bit to protect ourselves.
We do.
Let's do a little bit. Let's not give guns to terrorists. Let's not give guns to crazy people. I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
That's subjective. Define crazy. Define what do you mean?
How about we let the people who are in that profession define them?
Oh, so you're going to trust other people?
You trusting them with firearms? No. I think trusting them to not have firearms is less of a leap of faith.
I'm trusting me with firearms.
Okay.
If you're, I mean, that's the thing. It's the reason it exists is because I don't trust other people to make a determination for
the reason I think it shouldn't exist is because I don't trust other people. All right, I don't think we're going to agree on this one.
You know what?
You know what? But I still love you.
Yeah, of course.
All right.
And
you're going to keep talking.
The good.
You're just going to keep going.
Your good nature is what gives me hope.
All right.
That's the thing.
Well, your good nature is the reason why.
Be nice. I do have a good nature.
I know you do. You do. You do. And that's why. Even though I think guns should not exist, it doesn't bother me that you have a ton.
I do not actually have a ton. I wish I did.
ATF, are you listening?
I wish I did, actually.
ATF, a ton of firearms.
So not even 10. Not even 10.
He could take on the entire United States military by himself. I'm telling you.
Beautiful thought.
Love you, brother.
I love you too.
Yep. it's one of these issues that is just, you can't go one way too hard and you can't go the other way too hard. So what do you do? And it's
yeah, exactly. You default to common sense gun regulation.
Just because you put common sense in front of it does not make it, it's still gun control. Putting a democratic in front of socialism, still socialism.
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff. It's rhetoric at that point.
It's not
but
rhetoric.
It is rhetoric.
It's not rhetoric.
Absolutely rhetoric.
It's not rhetoric.